This story might not be the usual tale you're used to reading around here. Yeah, I know, there's no end to those stories about someone getting blindsided by the person they trusted most. But my story? Well, it's not exactly one of those. See, I wasn't just some poor guy who got betrayed. By the time it was all said and done, I did my share of betraying, too. But before you start thinking I'm just another case, let me say this, I didn't end up where I did by choice. I got pushed, pulled, and practically dragged into doing what I did. So, it's not all on me. Anyway, let's take a step back. You've got to know the backstory before we jump into the madness, right? First off, I'm just a regular guy. Not some genius, not the hero of any story. Just an ordinary dude with a normal job, trying to get by and keep things on an even keel. I've never been one to go looking for trouble or drama. I'm steady, predictable, even. That's just how I am, always have been. My name doesn't really matter here, but my wife's name is Anna. Now, she's a whole different ballgame. Anna was the kind of woman you couldn't help but notice. She had this vibe, you know. She'd walk into a room, and like that, everyone's attention would shift to her. It wasn't just that she was stunning, though she certainly was easy on the eyes. It was more about the way she carried herself. Confident, sharp-tongued, quick on her feet in any conversation. There was an energy about her that just pulled people in. When we first met, I remember being in awe of how effortlessly she made everything seem. People just liked being around her, and who could blame them? She was funny, charming, with a laugh that could brighten up the gloomiest of days. And her sense of humor? Man, that was something else. She could roast you with a single line, and you'd end up laughing right along with her. It was like magic. Everyone loved that about her, our friends, my family, even my buddies. And honestly, back then, I did too. But after a while, that same humor started to cut a bit deeper. It's tough to keep laughing when you're always the punchline, you know. She was the fun one in our relationship, I was more serious. I was the one keeping the wheels turning, making sure we didn't go off the rails. For a while, that balance worked just fine. She brought the spark, and I kept it from burning the place down. But that humor of hers, yeah, it eventually turned on me. It played the cruelest, nastiest joke on me you could imagine. So twisted, I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't lived through it. And you probably won't either, not until I lay it all out for you. It was just another evening, nothing out of the ordinary. I came home from work, worn out as usual. The daily grind was really starting to wear me down, but hey, that's just life, right? Work, come home, eat, sleep, rinse, repeat. But that night, when I walked through the door, the house smelled warm, welcoming. Dinner was already set out on the table, something Italian, if I recall correctly. She knew pasta was my thing, so she'd make it on nights when she was in a good mood. Candles were lit, too. Anna had this thing for setting the right atmosphere. And there she was, sitting there, smiling like everything was perfectly normal, like our world wasn't about to flip upside down. We sat down to eat, chatting like we always did about the usual stuff. I asked how her day went, she asked about mine. She laughed at some silly comment I made. That laugh of hers, I can still hear it. I remember feeling like everything was okay, not picking up on any signs because I was too busy shoveling food into my mouth, trying to unwind after a long day. But as the conversation dragged on, something in the room shifted. It was subtle at first, just a change in her posture, the way her voice dipped slightly. I caught her leaning back in her chair, her eyes narrowing just a touch. And then, out of nowhere, she dropped it on me. You know, she began, sounding almost casual, like she was chatting about the weather or what was on TV. Lately, I've been feeling a bit tired of us. I glanced up from my plate, bewildered, wondering if I had misheard her. Tired? I echoed, my fork frozen in midair. What do you mean, tired? She sighed, like she was explaining the most mundane thing in the world. I don't know, it's just that things have felt stale, like we're stuck in a rut, you know. I didn't know. Not even close. I was blindsided. There hadn't been any fights, no obvious signs of trouble, not that I could see, at least. Sure, we had our routines, but I thought we were solid. Married for 7 years, you'd think we'd have this whole thing figured out by now. But I was so wrong. And then she hit me with the real sucker punch. So, I slept with someone, she said, her tone flat, like it was no big deal. Like she was telling me she'd bought new shoes or changed the curtains. It made me feel better, but don't worry, I'm not planning to do it again. I couldn't even begin to process what she'd just said. My mind went blank. Everything around me just faded into silence. Her words hung there in the air like a bad joke that hadn't landed yet. Did she really just say that? Did she seriously just admit she cheated on me, over dinner, as casually as if it were nothing? My mouth went dry. I gripped my fork tighter, feeling the metal bend under my hand, but I didn't care. I stared at her, desperately searching her face for any sign that this was just one of her cruel jokes. But there was nothing there. Just cold indifference. Then, as if she hadn't just torn my world apart, she stood up, walked over to me, and kissed me on the lips, a quick, meaningless peck. "Good night," she murmured softly, and without another word, she turned and headed to the bedroom, leaving me sitting there, frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't even think straight. I looked down at my hands and noticed I had bent the fork clean in half. My chest was tight, and a surge of rage began building inside me, filling every part of my being. But instead of chasing after her, instead of demanding answers, I stayed rooted in my chair, my fists clenched, my mind spinning with just one thought: revenge. Did she seriously think she could drop a bomb like that, kiss me goodnight, and just go to bed like everything was normal? That I was supposed to just sit there and not react? Oh, I was going to react, all right. I was going to make sure she regretted every single word that came out of her mouth. But how was I supposed to know it was all a joke? How was I supposed to guess that her twisted sense of humor would push things to this point? When she kissed me on the lips and then sauntered off to the bedroom like nothing had happened, I felt a fire of rage blaze through me. I couldn't just sit there and stew in it, not with my head spinning the way it was. So, without a second thought, I grabbed my jacket, threw it over my shoulders, and walked straight out of the house. I had to get out of there. I needed air, some space to think, something to help clear my head. But more than anything, I needed to talk to someone. My first instinct was to call my best buddy, the one I usually leaned on whenever things went sideways. But as I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb stopped on a different name: my wife's friend. Let's call her Sarah. Now, Sarah wasn't just some casual acquaintance of Anna's. I'd actually known her longer than I'd known my wife. We used to hang out in the same circles before Anna and I became a couple. And if I'm being completely upfront, there had always been a little something between Sarah and me. Nothing serious, but I knew she had liked me back in the day, before Anna entered the picture. It was one of those situations where the timing was never quite right. Still, I had this gut feeling that her feelings hadn't entirely faded. So, without giving it much thought, I dialed her number. She picked up after a couple of rings, and I could tell by her tone she was surprised, but not in a bad way. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice casual, like it hadn't been months since we last talked. "Can you meet me?" I blurted out. "At the bar near your place? I need to talk." There was a brief pause, but she didn't ask any questions. "Sure, I'll be there in 10. That was it. No grilling me on why I needed to meet or what was happening. She just agreed, like she knew something was up. I jumped into my car and headed to the bar, my mind still spinning from what had just happened back at the house. When I pulled up to the place, I spotted her right away. She was already seated in a booth, nursing a drink. As I walked in, Sarah glanced up, her eyebrows arching slightly in surprise. "Where's Anna?" she asked. I sat down, sidestepping the question for a moment. "She's not coming," I replied, my voice flat. That caught her attention. She leaned forward, her expression shifting from casual curiosity to genuine concern. "What's going on? You look like you've just seen a ghost." We ordered a couple of drinks, and once the alcohol started kicking in, the words just spilled out of me. I laid it all out there, what Anna had said, how she casually admitted to cheating, and how she acted like it was no big deal. At first, Sarah didn't believe me. I could see the disbelief in her eyes, the shock. But the longer she looked at me, the more it sank in. She realized I wasn't making any of it up. I could almost see the pieces coming together in her mind. We kept drinking, and the conversation got heavier with every round. The alcohol took the edge off my anger, but it was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. By the time the bartender called last call, we were both pretty hammered. Out of nowhere, Sarah leaned closer and said, "I've got another bottle of wine back at my place if you want to keep this going." I didn't even have to think twice. I nodded, and we left the bar together. Her apartment was just a short walk away. We stumbled inside, laughing about something I can't even recall now. The moment we cracked open that bottle, though, I knew exactly where this was heading. There was a look in her eyes, an intensity one couldn't ignore, and I wasn't about to stop it. I didn't want to. It didn't take long. After a few glasses, things escalated quickly. 1 minute we were talking, and the next, we were on her couch, hands all over each other, lips locked. In that heated moment, I did something I hadn't planned on. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not the whole thing, just bits and pieces here and there. Of course, Sarah noticed and wasn't having it at first. "What are you doing?" she slurred, her voice still sharp despite the alcohol. She pushed my hand away. "It's just for me," I said quickly, trying to calm her down. "No one else will ever see it. I swear, it's fine." She hesitated, staring at me for a moment, but then she gave in. I guess alcohol, desire, and years of unresolved tension can make you do things you wouldn't normally do. So, I kept the camera rolling for a while, capturing just enough to satisfy whatever twisted part of me thought this was the right move. After it was all said and done, I sat up and told her I needed to leave. She looked at me, disappointment clear on her face. "You're going?" she asked, a hint of hurt creeping into her voice. "Yeah, I think I should," I replied, already feeling the weight of what I'd just done pressing down on me. "It's late." She wanted me to stay, I could see it in her eyes. But I wasn't about to spend the night in her bed. This wasn't going to become a regular thing, and I definitely didn't need to complicate my life any more than it already was. So, I left. Called a cab, and as I sat in the back seat, my head swimming from both the booze and what had just happened, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. I'd done it. I'd taken my revenge. But did it make me feel any better? Not really. If anything, I just felt empty, like I'd tried to fill a void for the night, but it wasn't going to fix a damn thing. When I finally made it back home, it was late. The whole house was dark, and Anna was probably fast asleep in our bedroom, completely clueless about what had just gone down. I stood in the hallway for a minute, my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything. And then, without a word, I headed to the couch and crashed there for the rest of the night. The next morning, I could already feel the tension hanging in the air. You know, that heavy, suffocating silence that tells you something's off. Yeah, that's what it was like. I tried to shake it off as I dragged myself into the kitchen, half expecting Anna to be her usual self, acting like last night never even happened. But no. She was sitting at the table, her eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line as she scrolled through her phone. She didn't bother to look up when I walked in, just sipped her coffee. But I could tell she was pissed. Not the raging kind, but that quiet, simmering anger where you know she's just waiting for the right moment to let loose. I sat down across from her, pretending not to notice. But I could feel her eyes boring into me, practically drilling a hole in the back of my head. We sat there in silence for a few minutes, eating, before she finally decided to speak, her voice dripping with irritation. "So," she said, stretching the word out, "where were you last night? You came home so damn late, and you didn't even come to bed." I could feel her eyes burning into me, waiting for an explanation. I wasn't in the mood for an interrogation, but I knew I had to say something. This time, though, I wasn't planning to lie. She'd started this mess, after all. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. "I was out," I replied flatly, not giving her anything more to work with just yet. Needed some space to think. Her eyes narrowed, and she set her phone down, giving me her undivided attention. "Think about what?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were up to something." I glanced at her, a slight smirk forming at the corner of my mouth. "Yeah, I was thinking about us. About how I'm getting a little tired of this relationship too." That threw her off. She blinked a few times, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Wait, what? You're tired? Since when?" I shrugged, keeping my tone casual like it was no big deal, even though we both knew otherwise. "For a while now, I guess." "And last night," I paused, letting the tension settle in the room. "I did something about it." For a moment, her expression didn't change. She just looked puzzled, almost like she thought I was messing with her. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, smirking like she'd caught me in a lie. "Oh really? You did something about it? What did you do, huh? Cheat on me?" I looked her straight in the eyes and nodded. "Yeah, I did." The smirk stayed on her lips, but I could see her eyes searching mine, trying to figure out if I was messing with her or not. "Oh, come on," she said, letting out a short, almost dismissive laugh. "You're joking, right? Is this your way of getting back at me for what I said last night?" I didn't look away. "I'm not joking, Anna. I cheated on you." Her smile faltered for a brief moment, but then she forced it back. "Sure you did. With who, huh? The waitress at the bar? Some random girl from work?" I took a deep breath, knowing exactly what this next part was going to do to her. "No, not some random girl. It was with Sarah." That hit the mark. Her smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure disbelief. She stared at me, her mouth hanging open, like she couldn't quite grasp what she'd just heard. "Wait, what? Sarah? My Sarah? Are you serious?" I didn't flinch. "Yeah, I slept with her last night." She blinked, then burst into laughter, though this time it was more nervous than anything else. "Oh my God, you're joking. You have to be. Sarah? That's your big story? What kind of twisted prank is this?" I didn't respond. I just calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. Without a word, I hit play and held it up for her to see. She glanced at the screen, still smiling, still thinking it was some elaborate joke. But as the video played and Sarah's face appeared, I saw the color drain from her cheeks. Then the audio kicked in, our voices, the unmistakable sounds of what had happened, and her expression completely transformed. Her face went pale, eyes widening in horror. She covered her mouth with her hand, and before I could react, she smacked the phone right out of my hand, sending it clattering across the table. "You bastard," she screamed, her voice cracking as she shot up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. "You idiot. You slept with Sarah. Have you lost your damn mind?" I stood up too, my anger flaring to meet hers. "Oh, now I'm the idiot. What about you, huh? You cheated on me first. You don't get to play the victim here." She glared at me, eyes blazing, her chest heaving with every breath. "I didn't cheat on you, you moron. It was a joke." I froze, her words echoing in my head, but I couldn't quite process them at first. "A joke? What are you talking about?" She threw her hands up, pacing around the kitchen like she was about to explode. "I said it to mess with you. It was a joke, you idiot. I didn't sleep with anyone. I was going to tell you after you calmed down, but you stormed out of the house before I had a chance to explain." The room began to spin. My mind struggled to catch up with what she was saying. "A joke? You were joking?" "Yes," she screamed, tears now streaming down her face. "I was joking. I never cheated on you, but you just went and slept with Sarah and even filmed it. How the hell do you expect me to react to that?" It felt like the ground was collapsing under my feet. All the anger and self-justification I had built up inside myself shattered in an instant. I just stood there, my mouth dry, my heart pounding, realizing how badly I'd messed up. "Anna," I said softly, trying to reach out to her. "I didn't know. She cut me off, her voice breaking. "I don't want to hear it. You've done enough." Tears streamed down her cheeks, and I'd never seen her look so broken. "You ruined everything. You slept with my best friend. How am I supposed to forgive that? I had nothing. No words could fix this." "I didn't know," I repeated weakly, but even to my own ears, the words sounded hollow and useless. She shook her head, taking a step back. "Just go. I don't want to see you right now." With that, she turned and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door so hard that the walls rattled. A moment later, I heard the lock click, followed by the sound of her sobbing. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, feeling like my entire world had just caved in on itself. I wanted to fix things, to apologize, but what could I possibly do now? I had messed up badly, and there was no way to take any of it back. After Anna locked herself in the bedroom, I knew I couldn't just stand around hoping this would somehow fix itself. The guilt was gnawing at me. I couldn't shake the look on her face from my mind, the shock, the pain. And yet, I was still angry. Angry that she had made that ridiculous joke in the first place, that she had pushed me to do what I did. So, I grabbed my jacket and headed straight to Sarah's place. I needed to tell her everything. When I got there, she opened the door, and I could see a flicker of happiness in her eyes, at least for a moment. I didn't bother with small talk. I spilled it all out, how Anna had confessed her so-called joke, and how I had shown her the video. As I explained, I watched Sarah's face go from confusion to fury. "You're a real jerk, you know that," she spat, crossing her arms, her expression hardening. "You set me up. You didn't tell me this was all part of some twisted revenge plan. What are you talking about?" I shot back, my own frustration boiling over. "You agreed to it. You knew exactly what we were doing." "Yeah, I agreed because I thought it was just between us," she yelled, pacing the living room, her hands gesturing wildly. "I had no idea you were using me to get back at Anna. Do you even understand what you've done? I've lost my best friend because of you." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my cool. "It's not all on me, Sarah. You were there. You knew what was happening. You're just as responsible." She stopped in her tracks and glared at me. "You really are something else, you know that. I've been in love with you since college, and this is how you repay me? By screwing up my entire life?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no clue she still felt that way, not to this extent. For a moment, the anger between us faded, replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable silence. We both sank onto her couch, staring blankly at the floor, trying to make sense of everything that had just unraveled. After a few minutes, Sarah sighed and pulled out her phone. "I'm going to try calling Anna. Maybe I can explain, make her understand." I don't know, something. She dialed, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried a few more times, but it was no use. Anna wasn't picking up, and I didn't know if she ever would. Desperation started to settle in. I felt like I was drowning, and no matter what I did, I couldn't pull myself out. I left Sarah's place eventually and headed back home, hoping I could talk to Anna, apologize, somehow fix this mess. But as soon as I walked through the door, she looked at me and said, "I've already called a lawyer." She didn't even meet my gaze, her voice cold and detached. "I'm filing for divorce." My stomach dropped. It was like the floor had vanished beneath me, and I was free-falling into a bottomless pit. "Anna, please," I began, but she wasn't interested in hearing anything I had to say. "There's nothing left to talk about," she cut me off, her back turned as she folded laundry like it was just another ordinary day. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I stood there, searching for the right words, but nothing came to me. I felt like absolute garbage. I had lost her. There was no way to undo what had happened. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I went back to Sarah's place. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I asked if I could stay with her for a while. She hesitated, her eyes scanning my face, full of frustration and doubt. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said at first, crossing her arms again. I couldn't really blame her. I had dragged her into this mess, and now she had her own problems to deal with. I turned to leave, feeling defeated, but just as I reached the hallway, she called me back. "Wait," she said, her tone softer this time. "All right, fine. You can stay, but just for a little while. This whole situation, it's a lot to deal with." So, I ended up staying with Sarah. The divorce process dragged out for about a month, and during that time, our entire social circle got wind of what had happened. Anna made sure of that. She told everyone, down to the smallest detail, and soon our friends were taking sides. Some stayed neutral, but most took her side. I couldn't really blame them. During that time, Sarah and I started spending more and more time together. What had started as a mistake, fueled by anger and some very poor choices, slowly began turning into something else. We tried to date, to make sense of this new reality. But the more we pushed forward, the more it became clear that something just wasn't right. There was a huge gap between us, like we were both too broken, too out of place to make anything work. She still had feelings for me, I could see that, but now they were tainted by everything that had gone down. I felt the same way. We tried to pretend things were normal, but they weren't. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the guilt of what we had done. Every time she smiled, it seemed forced, like she was trying to convince herself that this was okay. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't. I was stuck in this limbo, caught between the wreckage of my marriage and this fragile thing with Sarah that didn't feel real. And as the days went by, it became clearer that no matter how hard we tried to move on, neither of us could escape the mess we had created. We both felt out of place, and I had no idea where to go from there. Update: it's been some time since all of this went down, and I figured I owe you an update. After everything with Anna, the divorce, and that whole mess with Sarah, I've had some time to reflect. I've grown up a lot, more than I ever thought I could. Honestly, Sarah and I gave it a shot. We had history, after all, and for a moment, it felt like maybe we could turn this chaos into something meaningful. But the truth is, it just wasn't right. We leaned on each other, sure, especially when our worlds were crumbling, but we both knew something was off. What really killed it, though, was our so-called friends. The judgment was relentless. People love to talk, to point fingers, acting like they're somehow above it all. They whispered behind our backs, made snide comments, treated us like we were the latest scandal to gossip about. It was exhausting, and eventually, it became too much to handle. One night, after yet another awkward encounter with one of her friends, Sarah and I sat down to talk. And we both knew. We both knew this wasn't going to work, not with all the baggage, not with everyone's opinions hanging over us like a storm cloud. So, we made the decision to end it. There was no big fight, no dramatic breakup. We just let it go for both our sakes. Now, I'm in a different place, literally and figuratively. I've decided to move to a new city. I'm packing up my things, getting ready to leave this town and all its memories behind. It feels strange, but it also feels right, like I need to distance myself from the mess, from the people who won't let me forget what happened, and just start fresh. I want to start my life over. No more judgmental eyes, no more baggage from the past weighing me down. It's terrifying, I won't lie, but there's something about a clean slate that gives me hope. Maybe this time, I can figure out who I really am, without all the mistakes and bad decisions hanging over my head. I'm not saying it'll be easy, nothing ever is, but it's a step forward, and for the first time in a long time, I feel ready for it. Here's to new beginnings. Update, so, here I am, already settling into a new city. It's surprising how quickly things can change once you make the decision to leave the past behind. I managed to find a job pretty fast, too. Now, I'm working in an office, doing something completely different from what I used to do. It's nothing glamorous, just some basic admin work with a little project management thrown in. It's steady, and to be honest, after everything I've been through, the normalcy is a bit of a relief. I clock in, do my job, and clock out. No drama, no stress, just the daily grind. And for now, that's more than enough. But, of course, life has a way of tossing the unexpected your way. There's this woman at work, let's call her Rachel. She's the kind of person who lights up a room the moment she walks in, though not in an over-the-top way. There's just something about her. She has this quiet confidence, you know. Plus, she's sharp as a tack and doesn't take crap from anyone. I catch myself looking her way more often than I probably should, and I think she's started to notice. But I haven't found the courage to say anything. I mean, how could I? I'm still dragging around all this baggage from my past. The divorce, the fallout with Sarah, it's all still there, lingering in the corners of my mind. I can't help but feel a bit guilty, like maybe I don't deserve a second chance. Part of me feels like I need to make peace with everything that happened before I even think about starting something new. So here I am, stuck in this awkward limbo. I really like Rachel, but I don't know how to approach her. I keep wondering, what if I screw it up again? What if I'm still too broken to make this work? So, I'm asking you all, what would you do if you were in my position? Would you take the risk or wait it out until you're sure the past won't come back to mess things up? Anyway, I just wanted to check in and say thanks for sticking by me through all of this. Your support has meant more to me than I can put into words. I'm still trying to figure things out, but it feels good to know there are folks out there who've got my back. Here's hoping I can turn all this into something positive. Update, I thought it was time for another update, and this one's a bit different from the last. I'm in a relationship now with that woman from work, Rachel. Things have been going well, better than I ever expected, to be honest. I didn't rush into it, though. I took my time because I wanted to make sure I was truly ready. I've been seeing a psychologist for a while now, really working through the mess of emotions and heartache after everything that went down with Anna and Sarah. It hasn't been an easy road, but it's been worth every bit of the effort. The thing I've realized is, I can't keep punishing myself for the past. Yeah, I made some big mistakes, and it took a lot to come to terms with them. But I'm finally starting to feel like I'm moving forward, like I actually deserve another chance. And Rachel, she's been patient, understanding, and just, kind. She knows all about my past, and even though I was nervous to tell her at first, she didn't judge me for it. That kind of acceptance is rare. One thing that hasn't changed, though, I never did develop a sense of humor. Maybe that just wasn't in the cards for me, but I've learned to live with it. We laugh about it sometimes, especially since Rachel has this lightheartedness that I really admire. Maybe that's enough to balance us out. Anyway, I just wanted to fill you all in on how things are going. I'm in a much better place now, and it feels good to finally be able to say that. Thanks for sticking with me through everything. Wishing you all the best, and good luck with wherever life takes you.